Contribution margin is your revenue minus your variable cost of goods sold. This equals your contribution margin. Your contribution margin percentage is your contribution margin dollar value divided by your revenue. What does this mean? When you look at your variable cost of goods sold, these are the items that should move up or down depending on how much or how little revenue your business does. So for example, if you're selling Coke bottles, your variable cost of goods sold would be the cost of the Coke bottle. If you sell 100, it'll be the cost of the 100. If you sell 1,000,000 like a supermarket, it'll be the cost of the 1,000,000. There's a direct correlation between how much you sell and then how much you consume of that item. Examples of variable costs of goods sold would most likely be purchases in a buy and sell business, the freight to get it into your possession, and then potentially the freight to deliver it to the client if that is necessary. It would also be very similar in a manufacturing business. It's the raw materials you use, it's the freight that you use to get the product into your possession, and then the freight to deliver it to your client. Those are the main examples of variable cost of goods sold. Why is this important? It's important to understand how much the cost of those direct inputs that vary change over time. If, for example, you increase your price, if your supplier costs go up, that's going to impact what your contribution margin is. Also, if there's a change in your product mix, some product mixes will get a better contribution margin than others. What should we be aiming for at contribution margin? In a manufacturing business, I would say around about 60% and above is where we want to be. Once you're above 60% in a contribution margin for a manufacturing business, you start to do very well. In a buy and sell or a merchant style business, you'd probably aim for a slightly lower contribution margin than in a manufacturing business because you're buying products that are finished goods as opposed to raw materials that haven't yet been converted into a finished product. The things that influence contribution margin: firstly, your selling price, that's going to impact contribution margin, the product mix of what you are selling, and also the volume of what you're selling. I mentioned a moment ago Coca-Cola bottles. If you're the corner shop selling Coca-Cola versus the big supermarket, clearly the big supermarket is going to get a better buying price because of the volume that they purchase. The other side of the equation is the variable cost of goods sold side. So that can be impacted again by your product mix. It can be impacted by how much waste there is, how much spoilage there is. Also, depending on how good your purchase prices are. If you can purchase from a cheaper supplier but still have the same quality, that's clearly going to help you with your contribution margin. Foreign exchange values can change this. If you're importing product from overseas and the foreign exchange rate changes either for you or against you, that's going to impact your contribution margin as well. One last item on contribution margin is there could be items that are variable costs of goods sold depending on your business that wouldn't necessarily be for another business. An example might be a subcontractor. If you're running a construction business and you're using subcontractors, they will go up or down depending on how much you're building. Whereas in another business, you might use a subcontractor and that's actually a fixed ongoing cost as well. The key point with any of these KPIs is making sure you're consistent in your application and calculation of these numbers.